The New England Patriots 53-man roster on Wednesday looks a little different than it did on Tuesday. Is it for the better? Stick around. You're about to be locked into the Locked On Patriots podcast.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxborough faithful. Thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage, and also hopefully your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Patriots is not only a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, but we are also free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So smash that subscribe button and download and follow Locked On Patriots wherever you get your podcasts to ensure you're getting the latest episode as soon as it's available. I'm your host, Mike Debate. I cover your New England Patriots for Patriots Country of Athlon Sports. So reach out to me, let me know what's on your mind on X at MDABATENFL. And while you're out there showing some love to Locked On Patriots via social media, please follow our account there as well at LO_Patriots. And Pats fans, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, so download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And Pats fans, your New England Patriots 53-man roster for 2024 is set. Not a lot of surprises coming from cut down day on Tuesday afternoon, but there were some eye-openers, not only among those who were cut, but also among those who remain. But folks, there's a reason why they're called initial 53-man rosters, because additions and subtractions are almost certain between cut down day and the start of the regular NFL season. And the Patriots did, in fact, make some tweaks to their 53-man roster on Wednesday. And here today to break it all down with us is our resident voice of reason, my Patriots paisan, the expert professional columnist for PatsFans.com, and of course, the co-host of Patriots 4th and 2 alongside the great Derek Havens. He is Steve Balestrieri. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome back to Locked On, bud.
It's great to be back. We always say initial, and it will change again, I'm sure, before week one. That's why they have this whole process.
Absolutely. That is why they have the process, and the process is ongoing. I once heard an NFL columnist, whose name escapes me at the moment, refer to NFL rosters as an unfinished work of art. You're still making additions to it, and until someone else carries that work of art out of your studio, you're always going to make tweaks to it. And I think that's exactly what happens throughout the season when it comes to the 53-man roster on an NFL squad. You're always making adjustments, additions, subtractions. That's probably going to ramp up over the course of the next couple of weeks as we head toward September 8th and the Patriots' first game, week one at Cincinnati against the Bengals. And folks, we're going to cover every bit of that game here for you on Locked On Patriots. But Steve, I thought we'd start today by talking about some of the moves that the Patriots made after the roster cut down deadline that was imposed by the NFL. And of course, that's 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday was the deadline to submit waiver claims. And the Patriots did claim 4 players off waivers. That also meant saying goodbye to 4 players. We're going to talk about those guys in just a moment. But the organization claiming offensive tackles Zachary Thomas, Demontrey Jacobs, defensive tackle Eric Johnson, and linebacker Curtis Jacobs, all off waivers when the window closed on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Steve, when you look at these players from top to bottom, obviously there are 2 offensive linemen, 2 official tackles. They've spent some time aligning at guard as well, so a lot of versatility there in both of these guys, a linebacker and a defensive tackle as well. So the Patriots really kind of focusing on the trenches here. What stood out to you about these waiver claims? Who has you most excited?
The big thing that stood out to me was that all 4 of these guys are pretty athletic. I think we saw in their times, when they picked them up. So especially the 2 tackles, I'm wondering if that is a nod toward the outside zone, running scheme that AVP likes to use. maybe these guys are a better fit for that. I don't really know much about the two tackles, so we have to do a deep dive on them. But I thought all of the guys that they put a claim on were, the faster, more athletic guys.
I agree with you, especially Jacobs, who arguably is probably, I think, the biggest name out of these four. Of course, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments section below, folks, if you think I slighted anyone, because that is not my intention. I'm actually a fan of all four of these players that the Patriots put a claim in, and I think they're all going to be able to contribute. Now, how much they're going to contribute, I think is still a matter of conjecture. Always curb your enthusiasm when it comes to players that are being taken in off the waiver wire. They're probably not going to be impactful Pro Bowl type players, but I think they can play a role here and do the job. I do want to start with Jacobs, who I think comes in at 6'1", 241 pounds. Former UFL guy, spent some time with the DC Defenders, but he's known for his time at Penn State, played 36 games with the Nittany Lions, 170 tackles, 9.5 sacks. Got in there on a couple of interceptions, forced a fumble, and of course, 1 touchdown. So, as you said, Steve, this is a guy that's athletic, can get after the football, get after the quarterback, and help to disrupt a lot of things from happening. The Patriots obviously losing Matthew Judon, a big-time playmaker. They're going to look to replicate some of that. I'm not saying Jacobs is going to come in here and be Judon, far from it, but he has the ability to come in and maybe add a little attitude, a little pop to this linebacking core. Definitely some athleticism. So I like this one, and I think this has a chance to perhaps be an impact signing for the New England Patriots. Obviously, the two offensive tackles that we're talking about here, Zachary Thomas. This kid spent some time with the Los Angeles Rams, 6'5", 300 pounds, so you want a sizable tackle. This kid is definitely it. There is some pro level experience there. We'll see if he can translate that to the field and possibly help this team, which does need some help along the offensive line. And then, of course, we got Demontrey Jacobs. Jacobs signed as an undrafted free agent in 2023 as well, coming off with the Denver Broncos, 6'6", 315 pounds. So the Patriots upgrading their size level here when it comes to Jacobs. And he played at Grambling State, played at South Florida. I know you said you're not all that familiar with the tackles, and I don't think a lot of people in Patriots Nation are, but when you look at the types of players that they're bringing in, the size type, the type of style that they're going to employ, what does that tell you about what the Patriots are looking to do along the offensive line? Is this an upgrade now to try to boost the talent here, or do you think they're kind of building something perhaps for the future?
Well, I think it could be a little bit of both, but I really think, when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, they need to upgrade now because, one, the run blocking wasn't fantastic in the preseason. I think that can be better, especially on the edges. And, their quarterbacks were, getting sacked way too often. And the pressure was building on these guys. Excuse me. So with the young quarterback, although Drake May probably is not going to start the season, I'm actually looking at him probably week 5 coming in, unless Brissett gets hurt somewhere. But they need to do a better job of protecting the quarterbacks, and especially on the edges. But yeah, I mean, these two guys, they could potentially be building blocks that they can build around, because no one really stood out, with maybe the exception of Wenyu, at tackle this summer and in the preseason games. So I think these guys are going to be given an opportunity to step right in and play some meaningful snaps if they're up to it.
Hopefully the Patriots picking up some help on the offensive line. We'll see what it translates to on the field, folks. But bottom line, Steve is absolutely right. The Patriots looking for athletic young players that can come in and make an impact. You saw some of the guys that they jettisoned, most notably Antonio Mafi, who really, I think, a project on the interior. We saw him play guard. We saw him play a little bit of center. They tried to give him the backup job to David Andrews this year, and I just don't think it ended up working out. It just was not something that Antonio was comfortable with. he's most likely on to greener pastures elsewhere. At the time we're recording this podcast, folks, we don't know where Antonio is signing, but all indications is that he will be going elsewhere for his football journey. So we definitely wish him well there. But it's out with the old and in with the new for the New England Patriots. But Steve, if you're going to bring in 4 players and you have a full 53-man roster, that means 4 players have to go. And the New England Patriots did make those moves, folks. Most notably, cutting wide receiver Jalen Reagor and cornerback Isaiah Bolden. These opened some eyes, maybe even opened more eyes than the cuts or non-cuts that the Patriots made at roster cutdown deadline day on Tuesday. Steve and I are going to talk about the players that have been jettisoned from New England as a result of the 4 newest Pats and what it means for the New England Patriots moving forward. All this and more when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast continues, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Patriots listeners, we've all been there. You want tickets for the upcoming homestand at Fenway to watch the Sox, or you want to close out the summer in style by watching your favorite music group in concert. You want tickets, but you're not quite sure how to get them. Well, don't spend another minute worrying about it because Game Time has you covered with a new feature called Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. In fact, Game Time Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only the most incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets for events like sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And don't forget to turn on Game Time's all-in pricing because toggling this feature shows the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Patriots fans, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots. And of course, if you have made Locked On Patriots your first listen today, or if you do so every day, a major tip of the cap to all of you everydayers out there that continue to make Locked On Patriots your daily destination for Pats coverage. Folks, if you are making Locked On Patriots your first listen each and every day, I implore you to make your second listen our good friends over at Locked On Fantasy Football. The Locked On Fantasy Football podcast features amazing analysts from all throughout the Locked On Podcast Network, all working diligently and tirelessly with one goal. They want to help you win your fantasy league. So definitely download, subscribe to, and follow the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, folks, joining me today to break down the second day of Patriots roster tweaking going on in Foxborough, really going on throughout all of the NFL right now and all of the major offices, is my good friend and Patriots paisan, Steve Balestrieri. Steve, in the previous segment, we talked about the newest New England Patriots and the Pats bringing in 4 exciting young athletic players to add to this 53-man roster. But in order to bring players in, 2 in particular may have raised some eyebrows, and that is wide receiver Jalen Reagor and cornerback Isaiah Bolden. Steve, before we get into the other 2 releases that took place on Wednesday as well, let's start with Reagor because this was an interesting one to me. We kept hearing a lot of rumblings out of New England that Reagor was working his way up the depth chart based on his satisfactory level with the coaches. They saw his ability in the return game, the potential he has on special teams, his ability to make contested catches, and his speed to be able to beat players down the field. When the Pats looked at the roster and they saw the names Jalen Reagor and Tyquan Thornton and obviously Kayshon Boutte, they made the choice to cut Reagor. What do you think was the deciding factor in them deciding to let Reagor go over someone like a Kayshon Boutte?
I think it's because he's more limited as a wide receiver. I mean, we know he's a good returner, and that's why I thought he might be safe. Because when I heard about this, them putting the waiver wire claim in, I was like, I wonder who they're going to let go. And honestly, I thought it was going to be Boutte. And so that's a little bit of a surprise. And I really liked Isaiah Bolden last year. He was starting to come on in training camp, and then he got hurt in that Green Bay game. I know he had kind of an up and down summer this year, but they have to make a cut somewhere. They decided to keep 7 corners, which now it's at 6, and 7 wide receivers, which I thought was a little interesting, especially with the 8th one, right? Kendrick Bourne on PUP. So, we might, I'm sure we're going to see some movement there once Bourne is ready. But I hated to see those particular 2 guys to go. But it's a numbers game, as we all know.
Yeah, it definitely is a numbers game. And I think you're right on the money with Reagor. And I think in a lot of ways, and myself included, a lot of us in the media tried to talk ourselves into Jalen Reagor because of the fact that he was a dual threat, so to speak. He was someone that can contribute on special teams as well as in the receiving game. And you look at players like that, and I think we're so used to the Bill Belichick regime of 24 years here that if a player can play multiple positions and do multiple things well, he's valuable. He's someone you want to keep around. I think the Patriots saw value in Jalen Reagor, but again, you look at the prowess that a receiver needs to bring to the table. Kayshon Boutte, in my opinion, has always been the better receiver. I think he's a much better route runner. I think he's better at the point of attack, much better at the point of catch, and you can actually use that burst of speed that he has in his legs to get open and to shed defenders. So I think the Patriots saw a tremendous amount of upside in Kayshon. I've been an advocate of Kayshon's pretty much all off season. I said that he should be on the roster, and I'm glad that he is. I also believe that Jalen would crack the roster as well. So I'm 1 for 1 in that regard. I'll take it. Isaiah Bolden surprised me. And it surprised me for a lot of reasons because this kid does have an awful lot of special teams prowess. And I think that's something that is so often missed when it comes to players that have a multifaceted skill set, especially the way Isaiah does. We heard Gerard Mayo refer to Isaiah Bolden earlier on this offseason as a special teams beast. I wonder if maybe they were looking for a little more prowess at the cornerback position. But again, I see a lot of upside in this kid. I distinctly remember Isaiah Bolden being drafted out of Jackson State, one of the only players, if not the only player, that was drafted from an HBCU that season, and his former coach, Deion Sanders, saying teams are going to regret passing over on Isaiah Bolden. They really should have taken a chance on this kid because he does have the ability to not only play along the perimeter, but he also has the ability to be a contributor on special teams. I think it'll be interesting to see over the course of the next 24 hours if a team wants to put a claim out on him. If he's not, I think the Patriots should do everything they can to bring him via the practice squad because this kid is someone you want on your side. And I would definitely think that they'll be interested in doing so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were able to bring him back unless somebody snags him up. Because I really liked what I saw out of him last year. And then, he unfortunately took that bad head injury in Green Bay and, ruined his season. We always root for the guys who get hurt to come back and play, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. But I don't think his career is over by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's going to find a home somewhere. Hopefully it's going to be back here.
Yeah, I hope so. I think the Patriots would be well suited to bring Isaiah back. And who knows what that will lead to if his re-signing on the practice squad, which we hope will happen, could lead to his return to the 53-man roster in short order. All different kinds of tweaks are going to happen to this roster, folks. So once again, keep a sharp eye out because moves such as you're seeing on Wednesday will continue throughout the week and even in the next week as the Patriots get ready for their season opener in Cincinnati against the Bengals. But, Steve, there were 2 other players that were cut loose today as a result of the roster additions and the waiver claims the Patriots put in. Defensive lineman Trysten Hill and offensive lineman Michael Jordan. A lot of people are expecting these 2 players to pass through waivers and return to the Patriots via the practice squad. But when you look at both of these guys, I think Jordan was probably a numbers crunch at this point. they might be going with guys that have a little more of an upside. But when you look at Hill, when you look at Jordan, if you're only allowed one, what's the player that you'd really want to bring back on the practice squad this season?
I really liked Hill. I liked what he brought to the table. I thought he played pretty well this summer. He can do some good stuff, in the pass rush department. I think, I would hope they were able to bring him back. I know they really need like run stuffing help, but it's never a bad thing if you can bring in a guy that can bring pressure from the interior. So, he's one of those guys, and they have a couple of other young guys that potentially can do the job. Of course, we'll have to see once they're playing against the ones instead of the twos and threes.
I think that's a very important thing to remember among all the positions, even the starters, even the guys that we've said have looked great during preseason. You're playing against vanilla schemes, and you're playing against very basic defenses and offenses. No team has tipped their hand at this point. So now when the real playbook gets put into place, you're going to separate the pros from the amateurs. And I think that's where you're going to see these players start to stand out a little bit. And who knows, maybe some wilt under that pressure. That's the gamble that you take when you're in the NFL, Steve. And as far as the Patriots practice squad goes, folks, the Pats have been active. They have signed a few of their released players to the practice squad. Not one player that the Patriots released on Tuesday was claimed by another team, Steve. So the Pats had their opportunity to go for it and to bring in guys that they wanted to bring in. Wide receiver Matt Landers, running back Terrell Jennings, defensive back A.J. Thomas, tight end Mitchell Wilcox, offensive lineman Liam Fornadel, defensive end Jotham Russell, comes to us by the International Pathway Program. Tip of the cap to Miguel. I know he loves these guys. And also running back Kevin Harris, who I was surprised was on the cutting room floor on Tuesday. Patriots bring him back via the practice squad. I think it's only a matter of time before he's promoted to the big squad. So folks, keep a sharp eye on Kevin Harris. But so far, the Patriots assembling a nice little practice squad, as Will Ferrell might say. So who knows? We'll see what this leads to for the New England Patriots. But there were a couple of key departures where players have already decided that they're heading elsewhere. In fact, a couple of notable Patriot cuts yesterday already have brand new homes. Is that a decision the Patriots will regret? And which move that the Patriots made on Tuesday or on Wednesday will serve them best heading into 2024 and beyond? Steve and I tackle that all-important question when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast wraps up right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patriots fans, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots. And we're talking day 2 of Patriots roster tweaking, roster movements here in New England. And joining us to break it all down is our resident voice of reason, columnist extraordinaire for PatsFans.com, and of course the co-host of Patriots 4th and 2, my good friend, my Patriots paisan, Steve Balestrieri. Steve, we've talked about the comings and goings in New England's locker room over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours. Some of the moves that the Patriots made have been expected. If I'm being very frank and very honest, I think most of the moves they've made so far have been expected. I haven't seen a whole lot that has really shocked me to the core. At the same time, there are still names that are out there that get cut or that get dropped, where you do look at it and say, wow, okay, I didn't think they'd really do it, or it really surprised me, or yeah, I expected it, but it's still a little bit of a shock to the system to see that. A couple of names that resemble that remark, at least when it comes to maybe lamenting the fact that these guys will no longer be in Patriots uniforms anymore. Quarterback Bailey Zappi, defensive end Sam Roberts. I've been a big fan of Sam since he walked through the door a couple of years ago and was drafted, and really was one of those guys that did everything he was asked to do, and he tried to do it to the best of his ability. Well, Chicago obviously sees something in Sam Roberts. They're not only willing to bring him in via the scout team, but they're already discussing plans to elevate him and sign him to the 53-man roster and bring him up to the top squad. So, of course, a tip of the cap to Sam Roberts, wishing him all the best in the Windy City. Have fun with the Bears over there, Sam. You're walking into a pretty good scenario over there right now. The Bears pretty well established on both sides of the ball, and it's going to be a fun year in Chicago, I think, with all of the new faces that they have. But I want to talk about walking into a good situation. Quarterback Bailey Zappi goes from being the fourth quarterback on the depth chart here in New England to being a practice squad member for the defending Super Bowl champions. He's going in to play with Patrick Mahomes and Carson Wentz and pretty solid quarterback room up there in Kansas City. Steve, when you look at both of these guys, which of these moves surprised you the most, that Sam Roberts is headed to Chicago or that Bailey Zappi is headed to Kansas City?
I think Zappi to Kansas City was a little bit of a surprise. And good for him. He, like you said, he's going from the number 4 quarterback on a rebuilding team to the Super Bowl champs on the practice squad. And I'm sure he'll run all the scout team stuff for them. So I think that's a good place for him right now. And, maybe with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, he can pick up some stuff, elevate his game where he can be a solid backup for somebody in the future, possibly even in Kansas City. I hated to see Sam Roberts go like you did, but from everything we've been reading and seeing, he didn't really have a great summer this year. And I thought that was a little surprising, unless he had some physical ailment that we weren't aware of.
I haven't heard anything about him being injured or anything that would prevent him from being able to perform at a high level. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It wasn't the best of summers for Sam Roberts. And based on the performances that the Patriots defensive linemen put out there, especially knowing that you were going to have to try to replicate what Christian Barmore brings to the table and knowing that you're not going to have him for a good long period of time, you needed guys that stepped up and were able to show you that they're going to be reliable each and every week. Patriots didn't see that in Sam, but Chicago obviously sees the potential. They're willing to nurture him and kind of nudge him along a little bit, and we'll see if it pays dividends. As for Zappi, yeah, it definitely surprises you to see him go to Kansas City. That's a stacked quarterback room there in with the defending champs. But once again, there's battle tests there for Bailey Zappi. He's played in big situations. He's played under scrutiny, under the spotlight, and he's very good at being able to run the scout team. And I think that may be an opportunity for him to showcase what he can do. So many times you see quarterbacks go to practice squads and they run the scout team and they're able to mimic other quarterbacks. Could be interesting to see Bailey Zappi try to do that this year, with some of the teams that are on the Chiefs' schedule. So best of luck to both of those guys. They were both true consummate professionals while they were here, and we definitely wish them all the best in Kansas City and Chicago, respectively. Steve, that leads me quite nicely into my final question for you today, in that the Patriots have made a lot of roster moves over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours. A lot of cuts, few signings, a couple of tweaks here and there. When you look at all the moves the Patriots have made, which decision do you think they're going to be most grateful for? And which decision do you think they might regret most when we're heading into the middle part of the season and a lot of these decisions now start to rear their head?
I think the best decision was Del Pettis. I liked what I saw from him. And, this is, I think this is Mayo's way of sending a message, just like the old Bill days. We don't care where you were drafted or if you're undrafted. We're going to choose the best 53 players that are on the field. And I like that. And plus the fact that I like what he did on the field, we'll see if he can carve out a game day role with the team. It might not be right away, but I always like to see an undrafted guy make the roster because it just shows, guys can put in the work and they may not come with the big pedigree, but if you put your nose to the grindstone and everything aligns for you, you might be able to have yourself a career in the NFL. He has a long way to go, but I was happy to see that.
Absolutely. So well said. And I agree with you. Look, Dell was one of the better players on this roster, especially in that secondary throughout the preseason and throughout training camp. We did speak to him in the media on Wednesday. We spoke to him at his locker, and he said, it still upsets him. I'm saying that a little bit more cleanly than he did, but it does still upset him that he wasn't drafted. And he's using that as fuel to the fire. He's using that as inspiration and motivation. And he's going to continue to do that now that he's on a 53-man roster in the NFL and stood the test of time. So good on Del Pettis, and I'm glad to see him here as well. Some of my other favorite decisions, obviously, I talked a little bit earlier about the retention of Kayshon Boutte. I think that's going to be a decision the Patriots will definitely be glad they did. I think he offers some upside, and he'll continue to grow with this team. And I also like the decision they made with Joey Sly as opposed to Chad Ryland. I think the Patriots needed a veteran kicker, someone that can be relied upon, someone that is not still learning the nuances of kicking in the NFL, especially with the uncertainty at quarterback and the problems they're having along the offensive line. This team may have difficulty putting up points throughout the season. And if you need 3 points and you need to get points on the board, I think Sly gives you the better opportunity to do that. And plus, he's a little bigger, he's a little more physical, and the kickers are going to have to be a little more physical with some of these new kickoff rules that are going to be instituted this year. So I like that move. Steve, before we take our leave of this subject, any decision that the Patriots made over the course of the last couple of days that you think they may look back on and regret?
Well, this one, I think, falls onto the realm of I liked what they did, but it may not be, in retrospect, the right move. And nobody knows at this time. And that's with Christian Barmore. I love the fact that, they put him able to return because we all know the Patriots defense is much better with him out there.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it's a sign of hope that, that they caught his blood clots early enough. I know the Patriots doctors hadn't seen one before, when David Andrews was suffering with that. And, from all reports that we're reading, they caught this one pretty early. So I love the fact that they did this, but, we don't know. He's out indefinitely. He might be gone for the entire season, and perhaps they could have used that with somebody else.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think one that Patriots fans and really any NFL fan is going to have to remember is you run the risk of losing a roster spot to put a player that may not have the opportunity to play this year. But when that player is as important as Christian Barmore is to this defense, I don't think you can make a wrong move. Maybe the Patriots will regret it, but I think at the time, I think that was the right move. And I think it will continue to be the right move. It kind of stands to reason, Steve. I mean, I know you look at things with a reasonable head, and I trust your judgment. I really don't see any move that the Patriots have made that I think they're really going to absolutely regret. I don't think they cut anyone loose that they can't live without. I don't think that they have retained anyone on this roster that doesn't deserve a spot. I know some of our listeners and some of our everydayers will have strong opinions on that subject. We encourage you to drop them in the comments section below. As long as they're respectful, we welcome any and all comments. Steve, what can I say? It's been a blast. I thank you for joining us here today, not feeling necessarily your best. Let's put it that way. If there were an injury list, I would have put Steve as today's guest, questionable with an illness and possibly even doubtful. But he's playing here and he is giving it everything he had. And we appreciate you, my friend. Before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can reach out to you, interact with you, and what we can look forward to that's right now currently marinating, simmering on the stove in La Cucina Balestrieri before the next time you join us here next week, buddy.
Well, one thing's for sure, that Steve isn't cooking tonight. Now I'm just, I'm fighting this flu thing, and it's been difficult. And I apologize for coughing so much, but you can't help it. Derek Havens and I will be doing a podcast actually later tonight, between 8 8:30 sometime. And we're going to be doing a lot of the same things you and I just talked about. We're going to be looking at the roster, the practice squad, things that we liked and maybe we're a little surprised by. But, with Cincinnati coming up next week, now everything is geared towards Cincinnati. We're on to Cincinnati, and that's what we're looking at,
I love it.
Between now and next Sunday.
Definitely. And you win the prize for being the first to officially use and appropriately use on to Cincinnati here on Locked On Patriots for the 2024 season. And we are, folks, we are on to Cincinnati. Now the New England Patriots continue to practice, continue to tweak the roster, but soon the time for the talk will be just about over as the Pats hit the practice field to prepare for the Bengals and week 1 of the NFL season. And of course, keep it right here on Locked On Patriots because the best is still yet to come. So make sure you're downloading, you're subscribing, and you're following because you are not going to want to miss a single second of the action. On behalf of my good friend Steve Balestrieri, I am Mike Debate, reminding all of you to stay safe and to stay well and to be the change you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here again next time on Locked On Patriots.